We'll grant them that Logan Webb, Tyler Rogers, and Ryan Walker were unavailable for that ninth inning, but Erik Miller and Spencer Bivens with the season on the line? What?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for 5.5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And coming up on today's show, we'll be breaking down how the Giants shot themselves in the foot, specifically Bob Melvin making some decisions that I found to be highly questionable, and I was not alone in the ninth inning with his bullpen usage in a tie game facing the White Sox, going for a sweep in, what to me is a pivotal, critical game there, especially when you're facing a team like that and it's tied and you're the home team. It's like you have the advantage, and then they basically gave away that advantage with some bullpen decisions. So I'm going to grant them that Logan Webb, Tyler Rogers, and Ryan Walker were not available. I think that's something that people shouldn't really use as an argument here. That's something I've seen a lot of people talking about, was that Logan Webb should have gone back out there, or Ryan Walker should be available because he had they're just trying to get one out there because Erik Miller loaded the bases in that fateful ninth. And then they ended up going to a right-handed pitcher against a right-handed bat with 2 outs and the bases loaded and the game still tied. And that pitcher ended up being Spencer Bivens, who to me, outside of possibly Landon Roop, is like the last guy on the depth chart in the bullpen. And I'd probably have him below Landon Roop because at least Landon Roop is a strikeout pitcher. And the problem with non-strikeout pitchers is you're often going to put a ball in play, and when the ball is in play, it's going to be a hit about 30% of the time regardless. And so you're going to probably get a ball in play, and if there's a ball in play, it's a decent chance that it's a hit, and that's exactly what happened. But yeah, even if Ryan Walker and Tyler Rogers were unavailable, which they were, Rogers had pitched 3 days in a row, Ryan Walker had pitched 2 innings on Sunday, and then had a dominant save on Tuesday, the day before yesterday's brutal loss. They still had Taylor Rogers, who hadn't pitched since the 14th of August, available. And they went to a lefty to start that inning in Erik Miller. And so I don't understand, just in general, the concept of having Erik Miller ahead of Taylor Rogers on the depth chart, because Taylor Rogers this season has a 2.57 ERA, a 3.24 expected ERA, a 3.51 fielding independent pitching. His strikeout rate is 28%. His walk rate, 7.5%. Now, the numbers I'm about to give you for Erik Miller include yesterday's outing. Maybe I should be looking before yesterday, but regardless, Erik Miller has a 14% walk rate. Taylor Rogers, 7.5%. So almost half of Erik Miller's walk rate. And just the idea in general of I've got to go to a lefty here in this situation. It was the top of the order for the White Sox. They go left, right, left there. But it's the White Sox. And those batters, those lefties, I went on KNBR shortly after the game. It was recorded and it aired later. So if you heard it later, I basically got sick after this game and right after recording that interview. So I apologize for no podcast yesterday. I was not feeling well at all. But the lefties, as I said on the radio, were Nicky Lopez and Andrew Benintendi. These are guys with OPSs in the low 600s. The guy I'm afraid of there is the righty in the middle, Luis Robert. He's the guy who I'm afraid of, not the lefties. And so the idea that you've got to go to a lefty, which is why they went to Erik Miller, I'd just start the inning with Spencer Bivens, and I'm not sure that's a worse decision. I think Bob Melvin, apparently after the game, said that Jordan Hicks was available. They didn't want to bring him in with the bases loaded against a righty there, and that's why they went to Bivens. But to me, why not just start the inning with Jordan Hicks? Bob Melvin's rationale was that he didn't want to give Jordan Hicks an inherited situation. He wanted to give him a clean inning. Well, a couple things I'll say. I wouldn't want to see Jordan Hicks anyway in that situation, bases loaded, 2 outs, because Jordan Hicks is also a guy who has a tendency to walk people. His walk rate on the season, it's not bad. I mean, it's 9.4%, but in his career, it's up around 12%. And so he's had trouble with walks in his career, for sure. This year, it's the lowest of his career so far, so there is that. But at the same time, I would rather see Jordan Hicks than Spencer Bivens. There's pretty much anybody outside of possibly Landon Roop, but even I'd probably feel better about Landon Roop because the stuff is just better. I think the stuff of Landon Roop is just nastier than what Spencer Bivens features. And, the strikeout rate for Roop is 22.4%, whereas for Bivens, it's like 18%. So anyway, I just think there was about anybody else other than Miller and particularly Bivens to go to there that would have made more sense. Like give Jordan Hicks the 9th, right? If you want him, if he's available and you're saving him for a clean inning, give him the 9th. Because if it's like that whole idea of saving your best guy for a possible situation that may come up later, when if you allow runs in that top of the 9th, the way the Giants were not scoring runs themselves. And plus, I'm afraid of Luis Robert there. And like I said, and so even if Miller gets out the lefties, I'm scared that he gives up a homer to Luis Robert. And so I want a guy like Jordan Hicks in there to, with his heavy ground ball rate, his closing experience, to face the dangerous Luis Robert. This is a guy who hit 38 home runs last year. This year, it's not been the same. He's got 14 home runs in 71 games, but that's still a lot of power. I mean, 38 home runs last year for Luis Robert. And so I'm not afraid of the punchless Nicky Lopez and Andrew Benintendi. Like, look up their numbers. They're just nothing. They've got no... I do understand that Nicky Lopez led off the game with a triple, scored, a critical run there in the first inning for the White Sox, but he does not hit for any kind of power. That was an anomaly. Like Nicky Lopez, I should just pull up the numbers for you. Nicky Lopez, left-handed hitter. His isolated power in his career is .067. He's got 0 home runs on the season in 103 games. Hit 1 last year in 94 games. Hit 0 the year before. This guy has 1 home run in his last 3 seasons combined in 339 games. So he's not going to homer. He's just not going to hit a homer. And he almost did in that first inning. But he's also got a 66 weighted runs created plus over the last 3 seasons. And this guy's leading off for them. Like, what are they doing with that? I don't know. But I'm not afraid of him. So I don't need the lefty-lefty matchup there for Nicky Lopez. I'm afraid of Luis Robert. And I know I've said that a bunch. But the other point to make here is that the unforced error, in my opinion, which I said at the time, I said it before it happened, of optioning Camilo Doval. It leaves you in a situation like this when your 2 best relievers, Ryan Walker, Tyler Rogers, are unavailable. You don't have Doval, even though I said the argument that I made over and over. He's clearly one of their 8 best relievers. So, yeah, maybe you'd rather have Ryan Walker and Tyler Rogers closing out games, which I said for over a month before they optioned Doval that I would rather have Ryan Walker closing out games. My point was I'd rather have Doval in a situation exactly like we saw yesterday than Spencer Bivens. That was my point. And that I think so that was a front office decision coupled with a managerial decision by Bob Melvin, and every game counts, and that was one that got away, and it was a total unforced error on multiple fronts. So we'll continue to break that one down and then talk about how we can't let the offense off the hook either. 2 runs against the White Sox after they got Garrett Crochet out of there pretty quick. Just not enough. And you're not going to win when you score 2 runs a lot of the time, like almost ever. So we'll get into that too in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Tonal. When life gets busy, fitting a workout in can be stressful, but with Tonal, you can get an efficient workout personalized just for you and available with the amount of time that you have. Even the most dedicated gym goers struggle with consistency. The commute, waiting for weights, other people's sweat, Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. Powered by AI, Tonal learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Tonal learns from your movement and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move with detailed progress reports. They can even create personalized programs and workout suggestions or recommendations based on your individual goals. It's like having a personal trainer at home. Unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. All right, as promised, we're going to continue to break down this blunder by Bob Melvin and the Giants front office for optioning Camilo Doval, which is something that I don't think has been stressed enough in this kind of situation here, is the fact that they didn't have Doval and there was nobody forced them to option him, but they did it. And if they did it out of like, here, I've heard plenty of people say, send him down to teach him a lesson. Well, it's like, okay, maybe you taught him a lesson, but then you cost yourselves in the process. And so I never understood it. I didn't like it. I said it before it happened, I don't think they should do it. I said after it happened, I don't really get why they did it. But they did, and the outcome is Spencer Bivens is pitching with your season on the line. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we're going to be doing a mailbag. It's going to be brutal, I imagine. People are not happy right now, and I understand why. So we're going to get some fresh questions in there. We've also got a lot left over from last time. And for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor and help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the fall classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So, yeah, that's basically it. Like, anybody else, like Taylor Rogers, Jordan Hicks, Sean Jelly, who I didn't even mention, like, go, if you're going to go with some left-right pairing for that ninth, I'd rather see, like, by a factor of 10, Taylor Rogers and Sean Jelly, or possibly Landon Roop, or Jordan Hicks. Like, that combination of Erik, no offense, like, that's the thing. No disrespect to Erik Miller or Spencer Bivens. I just don't want to see them in a high leverage, not just game, but this was high leverage for the season. Like, if you look at the leverage index for making the playoffs and how much a particular moment would impact their playoff probabilities, like, that moment would be up there towards the top, in my opinion, for the whole season. And those are the two guys that they leaned on in that situation. So, yeah. And I mean, Miller's tendency to walk people, he walked two guys. And, that's what set it up for the White Sox. And Taylor Rogers, he doesn't walk people. Why not? Taylor Rogers has closing experience. Jordan Hicks has closing experience. Either one of those guys would have been just go with those two for the 9th and the 10th, in any order, and just ride or die. If you can't have Ryan Walker or Tyler Rogers, but also Camilo Doval has closing experience. So you got three guys with legit closing, histories of being good closers in Major League Baseball that they could have had and could have used, but they didn't use two of them, and one of them they sent down. I get it, he was struggling, but still, with everything on the line, I'd rather go with the guy who's been there and done that than guys who just absolutely have not. So, look, I think Bob Melvin has done a pretty good job this year. Just the other day, I was asked about his performance, but yesterday, I'm putting the L on Bob Melvin here, but also on the offense. Let's get into the offense a little bit, which, let's face it, you got Garrett Crochet, who was kind of as advertised, out of the game pretty early, and yet they were able to do nothing against the White Sox bullpen, which has been a train wreck. And so, yeah, Garrett Crochet went only 4 innings. And so Chad Kuhl has an ERA after this game of 4.68, and yet he went 2 innings, struck out 4, allowed just 1 hit. Jay Anderson, Jay is the first initial. I don't even know who that is. ERA of 4.28, 1 inning, 2 strikeouts. Ellard, don't know who that is. That's what I'm saying. These are a bunch of no-name relievers. Frazier Ellard, and it's Justin Anderson. And I do know John Brebbia, but he's got an ERA of 5.66, and by the time he came in, the game was over, 6-2 White Sox. They broke it open with 4 in the top of the 9th. But overall on the day, the Giants struck out 12 times, walked once, had 6 hits, 2 runs, and both of those runs came against Crochet. So the fact that they weren't able to do anything against the White Sox bullpen. So if we look at relievers and we look at the 2024 season and we scroll all the way down to the bottom, the White Sox have a bullpen ERA of 4.92, which is 3rd worst in Major League Baseball. Only the Blue Jays and Rockies have been worse, and the Giants got dominated by them. They, every pitcher who came in had multiple strikeouts except John Brebbia. The White Sox bullpen went 5 innings with 8 strikeouts and allowed 2 hits and 0 walks. It's just not good enough. And so, yeah, the bullpen decisions I did not like at all. And by the way, Bivens, his ERA is 2.81, but if you look at the peripheral numbers, they're just much worse than that. And it's just a matter of sample size with Bivens. And I would expect the more he pitches, the more he's not going to be great. And so no disrespect at all again. But anyway, yeah, so the White Sox bullpen has been quite bad. They do have a high team strikeout rate. I will give them that. It is their bullpen strikeout rate is, it's always hard to sometimes find as I'm scrolling through. It's actually not that high. It only appears high because if you look at strikeouts per 9, it can be deceiving when you walk a lot of guys. Their team walk rate is the worst in baseball. The White Sox bullpen, 11.6%. Giants drew 0 walks against them in this game. And the Giants were 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position. So that does factor in, it's not my favorite statistic to look at necessarily, but in a game like this, it definitely comes into play. And they had opportunities and they weren't able to do much with them outside of the 2 runs they got against Crochet in the bottom of the 4th. So, yeah, I mean, on the season, Giants hitting has been average, not horrible, but average. They're hitting 243, 312 on base, 396 slugging. It's mediocre. mediocre overall offense on the season. But if you look at, I don't know, since the All-Star break or something, it's going to look worse than that. The All-Star break, I think, was around just before the 20th of July. They've been a little above average since the All-Star break. So it's really, if you start cherry picking and saying since the trade deadline or something, their offense has not been good. And if you look even more recently than that, but they've actually been winning games. That's the thing, is their record since the All-Star break, since the trade deadline, it's above 500. It's, if they would have won yesterday, which they really should have, in my opinion, like that was a very winnable game. Logan Webb was great in 8 innings. He wasn't available because he's been sick, and they almost didn't let him pitch the 8th, and he knew that was going to be his last inning. So again, I'm giving them, let's not worry about was Webb available, was Rogers available, was Walker available. If they were unavailable, they were unavailable. Like oftentimes relievers will go to a manager and say, I can't go today. And if they can't go, they can't go. Like, we don't understand. The average fan doesn't understand like the rigors on the body that these guys are going through. And if they're feeling their elbow, barking at them, like, you just don't pitch. Like, you just can't. And so anyway, it's just... they've, like, since the trade deadline, what their record is, I think they're 12-8, so they should have been 13-7 with a win yesterday, but instead 12-8. It's not like they've been bad, right? And then since the All-Star break, they have been, they've gone, I should say, 18-14. And should have been 19-13. So it's not like they've been playing poorly at all in terms of wins and losses. And then since the 26th of July, which is when they had started this 4-game sweep of the Rockies, they do have the 3rd best record in Major League Baseball at 16-9. And it could have been 17-8. 17-8. I mean, that would be very good. And they were a couple of bad decisions away from getting there. Problem is the only 2 teams better are the Diamondbacks and Padres, and both have been significantly better. They've just been on absolute tears, both of those 2 teams. And so those 2 teams have pulled away. Even though the Giants have generally played well, the Giants have lost significant ground against both of them in the wild card race. And so now you're banking on Atlanta falling apart, which is a possibility, given that Atlanta is dealing with a lot of injuries. And, I mean, let's just be real. The Giants did lose yesterday, so they're 16-9 since the 26th of July. It's just like a cherry-picked date. It's almost a month, though, and that is the 3rd best record in baseball, even with the loss yesterday. And so not all hope is lost. The Braves did lose yesterday. They're facing some tough teams. Right now they're facing the Phillies, and they face the Phillies again today with the Giants off. And so if the Phillies can find a way to win, Giants would be just 3 games back. And they're going to Seattle. Seattle was doing well, but has recently fallen apart, and they're going to fire their manager, we just learned this morning. So, we talk about, now the schedule gets tough, but there's still this little pocket of opportunity here until it really does get tough in the month of September. So we'll preview what's to come, what the Giants schedule looks like, what the Braves schedule looks like, and also pay attention to the Mets, who are sneaking up on the Braves. They're between the Giants and the Braves in the standings. So all of that coming up in just a minute, and before we get into it. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Game Time. I love going to games during the summer on the road watching the Giants. Like, I love it so much, and especially because the weather here in the summer is not always like super summer-like, and I can go this year, well, it wasn't summer-like when I went, but to Boston, I went to Denver, been to San Diego and Los Angeles. I just love it, and got to buy tickets, right? And for me, Game Time is my go-to because of a number of reasons, including panoramic views from my seat, which is really important if you're going to a new place. I had never been to Boston, for example, and getting to see panoramically what that looks like in advance is crucial, much better than a two-dimensional map. And also the game time guarantee is just what does it all for me, because if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, as promised, we're going to say, where do the Giants go from here? They lose this game. Could have been 2.5 back with a win, but now still 3.5 back. And remember, if the Braves are indeed that third wild card team, Giants have to pass them. They can't tie them. A tie is a loss. And so that's because they lost 3 out of 4 to the Braves at home, including a 1-0 loss, 2 straight extra inning 1-run losses. There's just some games here in the last week or so that just look like it could doom them. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, though. Everydayers, tomorrow, let's do a mailbag as we get ready for the Seattle series. We're going to get questions about the decisions that were made yesterday and much more. A reminder to check out Postcast with Erik Engel right after the game, instant reaction. If you want to hear what Erik has to say after a game like yesterday and you want to join in the conversation and get that instant reaction, that's the place to go. Locked On Sports San Francisco on YouTube, because it has its own YouTube channel, because he also does postcasts after every 49ers game and Warriors game. So that is a definite must subscribe. Locked On Sports San Francisco, and the Locked On Giants postcasts go to our podcast feed on like non-YouTube platforms. So check it out. Anyway, where do the Giants go from here? Well, they go to Seattle, quite literally. And Seattle, it's, just recently, if you were considering this portion of the schedule like a couple weeks ago, you're looking at, Seattle's really good, and it starts a daunting stretch of the schedule. But it's worth pointing out, they just had a 1-8 road trip, and they're firing their manager, which is a little bit surprising to me. I was going to say shocking, but it's not like I follow the Mariners super closely, but it seemed to be a popular manager. But they've fallen to just 64-64. They're 5 games out of first place in the division. They're 7.5 back in the wild card. They've lost 3 straight. They're 2-8 in their last 10. They are good at home. They do have good pitching, but their hitting is significantly worse than the Giants. So, low scoring games, maybe, you never know, but it's good. You do have Blake Snell going in this series. You do have Robbie Ray going in this series, and Hayden Birdsong is also going to pitch in this series for the Giants. And then they have an off day followed by 3 games in Milwaukee. So that's tough. The Brewers are just simply a good team, one of the best teams going right now. And so it's like a survive road trip. If you can survive this road trip, maybe win a series in Seattle, maybe lose a series in Milwaukee, and then come home and face the Marlins and take care of business, you could still be in a decent position as you entered the actual tough portion of the schedule, where they basically face good teams until the Cardinals for the very last series of the season. The Cardinals struggling. And so a lot of games against the D-backs and Padres, 6 apiece in the month of September. So an opportunity to make up ground, but also those are like the hottest 2 teams in baseball right now. So Seattle struggling though. So if you can take advantage and then survive in Milwaukee, maybe win a game, like take advantage of Seattle and then win at least a game in Milwaukee, and then come play the Marlins, who are, the worst team in the National League right now, 46-81. It is still a little bit of an opportunity here to pick up some wins. And meanwhile, the Braves, the Giants are only 3.5 back of. It's like could have been 2.5. That's why this felt so huge to me. They play the Phillies tonight. Phillies are, I think they have the best record in the National League. They don't. The Dodgers now have it, but the Phillies are second. And then the Braves do play the Nationals at home, so that's a soft little spot for them. But then they go on the road and play 3 at the Twins and then 4 at the Phillies. The Twins are 71-56, and the Phillies, again, are 74-52. And so the Braves face a bit of a tough schedule here for the next, outside of the Nationals, for the next week plus, whereas the Giants have a little bit of a softer schedule. And so we'll see. I think it'll be very important to see where things stand once that Miami series is done. Meanwhile, the Mets play 4 at San Diego, followed by 3 at Arizona, followed by 3 at the White Sox, and then home against the Red Sox. So mostly good teams for the Mets as well, who are the team that's, the Mets are the team that's between the Giants and the Braves in the standings. Mets winners, they won a series against the Orioles over the last few days, and so they are just 1.5 back in the standings. But the Giants, they're not doomed, I would say, and these next 9 games for them could make or break them. And even if they do well, they will have a tough schedule for the most of the month of September, following their series against the Marlins. But up until then, this is their opportunity. This is their best opportunity to gain a couple games or more in the standings. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. Helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.